achieved.
I get it. It's very difficult to walk away. And I remember Steve Eisman talked about whether he was going to retire or not from the NHL, and he said if there's even the littlest bit of drive still in you to continue doing something, keep doing it, because you have the rest of your life to be done. So once you know you're done for good, then you're done. But if you have any intuition to continue going, you got to keep going. But on the flip side of things, you look at guys like Anderson Silva, Little Nog, and the big one, of course, last weekend with BJ Penn. They might still want to do it, but it's just not there. And at some point in this type of sport, you have to walk away. BJ Penn suggesting before the fight that he, has aspirations to get his title back again. If you're not in it to win a title, why are you in it? Absolutely, I get that. But we have to be realistic. He hasn't been able to put together a winning record in a short period of time, let alone a successful fight from start to finish. I missed the first round of the fight, and I saw some people scored it for BJ, which is interesting. But ultimately, what happens always happens. He faded, and in this case, Clay Guida took the fight over, won the matchup, and went on to take a decision. It's difficult. I know it's hard for the UFC to tell these guys, or at least sometimes it's hard for the UFC to say, hey, we're not going to employ you anymore because it's time for you to walk away. It's difficult for these guys to walk away, but ultimately it is time for a number of fighters to hang it up and move on from the limelight. But hey, that's just my opinion. It's not for me. It's not me. It's their life. It's their choice. It's their decision. Continue fighting. Welcome back to Kamikaze Overdrive MMA Predictions. Always, I am your host, Scott Johnson. And on this episode of the show, we are breaking down the upcoming UFC Fight Night 152, which will go down on May 18th from Rochester, New York. I'll be giving you my 6 main card predictions on this episode of the show. Now, as you've probably heard, we had a recent, the co-main event. Neil Magny was forced to pull out for a positive test. So his fight with Vicente Luque was scrapped. Luque is now facing a very late notice replacement. The order of the fights has been altered a little bit, and including one main card fight swapped out potentially. Again, I'm seeing different things on different websites. So either way, if I don't predict a fight, it's on the main card. On this episode, it'll be available on my website, kamikazeoverdrive.net, where in my prelim prediction, so you can check them out all there. And that's, again, as per usual, I'll be breaking in all my preliminary fights on my website. The bet packs will be for sale as well. Of course, I had Jessica Andrade last weekend. That was my number one pick play. I had Worley Alves, also my goal plays, but ultimately Jose Aldo let us down as the one leg in that didn't come through. So hey, we're back to square one, trying to get back on the get back rolling. I think what happened to me last weekend is I put too much stock into Brazil and the home crowd and home field advantage, and the Brazilians did not do well. I think they went, I want to say 3-6 or 3-5 against foreign fighters. They simply did not have a good night, so that hurt a little bit. Hopefully we get back on track here. We've got 6 interesting fights. You can follow me at KO_predictions on Twitter. Subscribe to me on YouTube. Make sure you click the notification button. Click a like as well. I always appreciate that. I see a lot of likes on there, and I greatly appreciate that. And hey, on that note, let's get to our first main card prediction. The first fight of the night transpires in the UFC's lightweight division as Davi Ramos 9-2-0 takes on the debuting Austin Hubbard with a current record of 10 wins and 2 losses. Now, Ramos has looked good since his debut loss to Sergio Moraes, was transpired at welterweight. I believe it was a short notice debut. He's had 3 straight submission victories, including submitting Nick Hein, which is pretty impressive. For Hubbard, he's debuting after his LFA 56 title win. He has won 3 in a row since his loss to Eric Wisely, where I believe he lost the title initially. I could be wrong on that. Physically, Hubbard 4 inches taller. I don't know the reach. I couldn't find his reach. And he is the younger man by 5 years. Now, looking at Hubbard first. He's got 4 wins by knockout, 2 wins by submission, 4 wins by decision. He has 2 losses on his record, 1 by submission, 1 by decision. His last 2 opponents have a combined record of 23 wins and 3 losses, with Hubbard accounting for 2 of those 3 defeats. So he's faced quality opposition fighting in LFA, which is just quite nice. Also, when you look at the depth of his overall experience, he has fought in 4 5-round fights, going 3-1 in that span. That's a lot of quality opportunities for a developing fighter. Now, it's worth noting his first 2 pro bouts, just building on that experience factor, his first 2 pro fights ended in the first round. Everything since has gone beyond the opening rounds. And again, I like that. I know people want to tout fighters who come in, they've knocked out 10 consecutive guys in the opening round. Yeah, but what happens when they get into round 2? What happens then? With a guy like this, he's shown he can perform. He's battle-tested. He finished his last fight. His last fight was a little bit controversial. He finished his last fight at the 4:45 mark of the 5th round, and it was a TKO win after a long, prolonged, and unacceptable barrage of undefended strikes, or barely defended strikes that he threw at a fighter just doing his job simply because the referee wasn't going to step in, and it looked like he should have stepped in well in advance of this, and it's quite disgusting to see if you get a chance to see it. I recommend you check it out for an example of what not to do as an official. Now, Hubbard, from what I've seen, he carries a pretty solid pace, lots of barrages of punches, mixes in his takedowns effectively, and he really wears opponents out, and that's what he does well. He's just a constant. I don't want to call him a go beast, but he's the type of guy who's going to keep engaging, and wear guys out. And once he gets in a good position, for example, if he gets your back, he's got some pretty thunderous ground and pound and really knows how to put it on a fighter and get him out of there. Now, for Davi Ramos, he's really starting to demonstrate the skills that many expected him to bring to mixed martial arts from his jiu-jitsu background. Elite level submission artist, absolutely. In each of his last 2 fights, he's landed 1 takedown, and each one of them led to a finish. In his win over Chris Grutzmacher, he landed 5 takedowns and got the submission in the 3rd round. So he showed both he can do it early and he can do it over a prolonged period of time and still get the finish. Against John Gunter last time out, he took him down. He transitioned to his back so smoothly, very impressively. Got the hooks in and eventually worked his way to a rear naked choke. He had something similar against Nick Hein, got him down, rotated to his back, and worked towards the finish. Very smooth, very difficult, and he combines strength and raw power with just impressive skill and fluidity with his movements. Very nice to see. Now, his wrestling is also very good. He's got good timing on his takedowns. He does a good job when his opponent steps forward, trying to engage, changing levels, putting him on his back. Taking a guy like Nick Hein with a judo background down, it's not easy, and Ramos did it with relative ease. Now, on the feet, Ramos will throw fairly hard, but it's a secondary aspect of his offense. In fact, it's a type of offense that will get him in trouble should he opt to employ it more than he should. The biggest concern here for Ramos is that he doesn't get the early finish, and Hubbard can push him beyond what his cardio is capable of and either score a finish in the second half of the fight or possibly grind out rounds 2 and 3 and earn himself a decision. That's certainly a concern here. Regardless, this is a big step up for Hubbard in this matchup. Ramos has looked fairly good against some pretty good opposition. I feel like Hubbard might be a little bit better than some of the guys he's faced as far as his overall capabilities, but I still think his skill set is within the realm of Ramos's gauge as far as what he can control and what he can overcome. I think we're going to see Hubbard move forward. Ramos will change levels, eventually put him on the mat, transition to that dominant back position, and my prediction is Davi Ramos to defeat Austin Hubbard by submission. Fight number 2 in the main card is the first of a couple of rematches we're going to get an opportunity to see as Charles de Bronx Oliveira, the 15th ranked lightweight, 25 wins, 8 losses, and 1 no contest, takes on the always entertaining Nick the Carney Lentz with a current record of 30 wins, 9 losses, 2 draws, and a single no contest. Now, this is a rematch from their 2015 fight that Oliveira won by submission, receiving a performance bonus, and that was a rematch from their 2011 no contest that was a fight of the night. Oliveira landed an illegal knee, got a submission. It was later overturned in that fight, but still, very impressive pair of matchups, and even though it seems fairly definitive in the way these fights have turned out, I have no qualms with this matchup being lined up again. Both guys have been coming a long way. They're on winning streaks. It's an exciting fight. Let them throw down one more time. Now, Oliveira comes into this fight having won 4 in a row and 5 of his last 6 since returning to 155 pounds. He's still talking about featherweight, but we haven't seen him move back down. And until he does so and does so successfully without having some weight issues, it looks like his future's at lightweight. Now, for Lentz, he has won back-to-back fights overall, including an upset of Scott Holtzman, a fight I got incorrect. He's won 3 of his last 4 and 5 of his last 7, which dates all the way back to the 2015 Oliveira loss. He's also a guy who recently moved back to lightweight and has found success. Physically, Oliveira 2 inches taller, of a 6-inch reach advantage, and he's the younger man by 5 years. Now, really, we have a clash of styles between Lentz's unrelenting pressure and wrestling versus Oliveira's dynamic submission game and undervalued striking offense. Oliveira, most wins in the history of the UFC by submission. Most wins ever. That's impressive. Every time he picks up a submission win, he just adds to that total. Conversely, Nick Lentz has been subbed twice in a 42-fight career, not including the submission loss to Oliveira that turned no contest. He's been subbed twice, once by Oliveira. So that shows you how difficult it is to submit this guy. And yet, here's Oliveira racking up the points. Now, in the first fight, Nick Lentz really focused on utilizing the body lock takedowns. He said that was a focus coming into the matchup, and clearly he executed that way. He didn't want to shoot in. He didn't want to expose his neck to a guy like Oliveira who's so quick at snatching it up and finishing a fight. Now, Lentz, he stayed right in the face of the Brazilian all fight long, was countering grappling attacks, he was countering and pushing forward. And what we saw Oliveira do was looking to use grappling attacks to negate the tight forward pressure of Nick Lentz. Oliveira, he's not afraid to be put in bad spots. He's always a threat. He can wrap up your neck. He can attack from almost any position. So for that reason, he's not put in uncomfortable spots in a lot of cases. Now, Lentz was landing some big shots, but at the same time, he was slowing down. He was getting hurt. Oliveira was using a little more varied striking, mixing in elbows and knees, and he dropped Lentz with a well-timed body to the midsection. Very impressive. And Oliveira was all over him. And if it wasn't for the bell, I would think Oliveira could have got the finish in that first frame. Now, despite the issues with the grappling attack that Oliveira was presenting to Nick Lentz, Lentz continued to look for takedowns. And he recognized he needed to stay out of the guard of Oliveira, try and pass as quickly as possible, get away from his legs, and then go to work. But he was having trouble getting to do that. Even when he got into side control or half guard, Oliveira is so quick at recapturing the guard and getting back on top, or getting back in a good position he can work from. Lentz had a lot of trouble executing that portion of his game plan. Now, where Nick Lentz did have success was in round number 2. He started getting in top position. He started landing strikes. He started kind of crushing Oliveira under his weight. He was trying to break him and control him. It's very difficult to do so. And again, as I say, it puts him in danger. But we know Oliveira's been broken in the past, and that's what Lentz was trying to do. Lentz kept pushing in the third round. He came into the clinch. But this was something that's very subtle but very well executed. Oliveira tied up the tie clinch, which we know he'll use a lot. And I don't know if he landed one knee, but he kind of pulled Lentz down like he was going to land strikes. So Lentz kind of focused on defending the shot coming from below. And with that momentary lapse in defense, all of a sudden Oliveira tucked his head and transitioned into a guillotine, moved it to a mounted guillotine, and got the finish. I believe he calls it the Bronx choke. I'm not 100% sure. Lentz resisted for a long time, very impressive, but ultimately he tapped out. He couldn't go any further. Now, both guys since that fight have continued to improve. I would say Oliveira has come further. He's continued to add to his game. Lentz is durable. He's tough. He's becoming more of a striking-based fighter, not just a grinding wrestler. But I still say Oliveira is the guy who's added more to his offense. Now, the problem that I see with Nick Lentz is that his strengths, his clinch grinding, and his takedowns, they put him in the realm of Oliveira's dominance. You're always in danger zone against Charles Oliveira when he can touch you, and that's the problem here. Oliveira, he absolutely can be broken. And again, that's what Lentz was going for, and that's what he could do in this fight. He could learn from the first 2 matchups. Maybe, he could hurt him with a couple shots, and we've seen Oliveira fold up when he gets cracked with a couple of shots. But ultimately, when you look at the way these two guys pair up, what Lentz does well puts him in the danger zone, and Oliveira just has too many tools. He's eventually going to, with his height and his long arms, whether they're standing or on the mat, eventually Oliveira is going to hook up a submission, grab Nick Lentz's neck standing, potentially could hurt him in the feet, look to double him over with a body shot, wear him out a little bit, and then jump on his neck, whether it be a rear naked or a guillotine, maybe an arm bar. Either way, I just think Oliveira has too many tools and too many opportunities to win this fight, and my prediction is Charles Oliveira to defeat Nick Lentz by submission. Now, the next fight of the card is one of those cards that I think, based on some sources, has been moved to the prelims and replaced with another matchup, but I have it broken down, so I'm going to put it in this spot, which is the original spot. We're in the UFC's women's bantamweight division. It's the 6th ranked undefeated Aspen lad, 7-0, takes on former, I think she's ranked number 2 in the flyweight division, Sijara Sarge Eubanks, with a current record of 5 wins and 2 losses. Now, lad is undefeated in her career. As I said, she's got wins over Lena Landsberg and Tanya Evinger, both in the UFC, both by finish. She actually beat Sijara Eubanks in her final Invicta fight back in early 2017. So this is a rematch, as I don't know if I already mentioned that. For Eubanks, she has won back-to-back fights since that lad loss. She beat Lauren Murphy. She beat Roxanne Modafferi. She missed weight for the Roxy fight, and we know she pulled out of the Ultimate Fighter finale flyweight title fight. So she's had issues, and she's had to come up to bantamweight where she's fought before. She's had to come back up to bantamweight where she should have limited issues or no issues at all making the weight. Physically, lad 2 inches taller. Eubanks will have a 1 inch reach advantage, and Aspen is the younger fighter by 10 years. As I said, Eubanks struggled with the weight cut, and this is a good move for her. I think this is a very good move for her. And with lad, she's coming into this, the bantamweight division needs new faces. And with Eubanks as well, coming back up, if she can make some waves, pick up a win here, that's huge. But with lad and Macy Chiasson, those are the 2 fighters for me to watch. I think lad and Chiasson, as they are rising up the ranks, and they're going to add a little bit of new blood into the division. There's a couple other girls out there, but I really have my eye on these 2 individuals. Now, as I previously mentioned, their first fight was at bantamweight, so they're right back to where they were when they fought the first time. The opening round of that matchup, and again, lad won it by decision. The opening round of the fight was spent primarily on the feet. Lad was pressing forward, and Eubanks was giving ground. Nothing massive landing on either side. It looked like Lad was a slightly busier fighter. Now, Sijara attempted to take a shot. She was the first to shoot, and Lad, for the most part, sprawled out of it, started to land some hard elbows and look for a switch. Eubanks kept driving, couldn't gain any consistent traction, but was able to finish the round out on top. Not doing a whole lot with the position, but she got to where she wanted to. Now, Lad constantly working with her offense, using her jab a lot to really tag Eubanks coming forward, who started to open up with some combinations, having success there. Eubanks again went to her wrestling late in round 2 to diffuse the volume of Ladd. Ladd turned with, again, mixed results. Ladd turned the tables in round 3, landing an early takedown, got on top, flattened her out, had a lot of success in that position. Eubanks was able to counter effectively, though, reversed the position, got to her back, got on top for a bit, but it was very late in the round, and it was kind of already pulled away from her. It was far from a blowout. But Ladd, I think, just did more often. She was more effective and more consistent with her overall offense. So how have these girls changed? That's the first question we have to look at. Have they changed much? Have they changed at all since they last fought? For me, the way I've looked at it with Ladd, comparing that Ladd to the one that's fought in the UFC, she looks much more purposeful with her offense. She moves forward. She lands better strikes. Her footwork looks better. She's not just throwing punches for the sake of throwing punches. And her body control has also improved. She just seems to have better body management, better body movement. She looks like a much better, much more, again, purposeful fighter. When she fought Evinger, her clinch attack was very effective, and she punished every time Evinger tries to close the distance to look for takedowns. She was punishing her. Every time she closed the gap and tried to wrestle, she punished her. And then she got on top and went for that ground and pound finish. She went off with her ground and pound. Damn impressive. Now for Eubanks, not a heck of a lot has changed as far as I'm concerned. She still relies heavily on her takedowns. 5 takedowns over her 2 UFC fights. It was a similar approach to what she did against Ladd, just not nearly as successful in the Ladd fight. And I think she'll probably try and implement something similar here. Eubanks, one of the reasons she had a lot of success in The Ultimate Fighter, fighting at 125 pounds, is because she was physically stronger and bigger than her opponent. She was able to impose her will. She was able to outmuscle them, use that ground game, use that size and strength advantage to her advantage, and really grind fights out as a result. She won't have that here, and she's facing a very physical opponent in Aspen Ladd. I think you look for Ladd here in this fight to press forward, to keep Eubanks backing up, land those bigger strikes. Her pace and pressure will be the difference maker here. And what I'm expecting is eventually Eubanks will try and do, I don't want to call it panic wrestling, but just in an attempt to change the trajectory of the fight, change levels, shoot. Ladd will counter, wind up in a better position, and then unload that ground and pound to earn the finish. So my prediction is Aspen Ladd to defeat Sijara Eubanks by TKO. Now, again, some sources have indicated this next fight, which is in the UFC's middleweight division, has been bumped to the co-main event spot. Very well could be, but either way, we're giving you our prediction here. As I said, it's in the middleweight division. It's the 12th ranked Antonio Carlos Jr., Shoeface, as he's affectionately known, 11-2-0 with 1 no contest, takes on the Hurricane, Ian Heinisch, with a record of 12 wins and a single defeat. Now, Antonio Carlos Jr. is climbing the ranks. He has won 5 in a row since his Dan Kelly upset, collapse in that fight, and he submitted 4 of those 5 opponents in that stretch. For Heinisch, he defeated Cesar Ferreira in his debut. He has won 4 consecutive bouts since a shocking upset loss that cost him the LFA title against now UFC fighter Marcus Perez. He was submitted in that matchup. Physically, Antonio Carlos Jr. is 3 inches taller, of a 7-inch reach advantage, and he is 2 years younger than Heinisch. Now, Heinisch is coming off a win against a similarly skilled opponent to Carlos Jr. BJJ black belt, capable striker, possible cardio issues. Very similar criteria between Fajeda and Carlos Jr. Now, it was the cardio and durability of the Brazilian that cost him against Dan Kelly. He was dominant early, he faded, he got finished. After that fight, he won a finish in the final seconds of the third round, and he took a decision. So, did he improve his cardio? Was the loss to Kelly a fluke? What do we want to contribute to that loss? I don't know. But we'll see. This is definitely a fight. We'll decide if he's cleaned it up or not. Now, for Heinisch, he does appear to have good cardio. He is 6-0 in decisions. He landed more strikes in his third round than he did in the first 2 rounds combined in the Fajeda fight. He's very quick, lots of movement, forces his opponent to chase him a lot. Also will move forward, but ultimately he's just a very live fighter. So the goal here for the Brazilian is going to be clamp down on that, shut that down, look for takedowns, get in his wheelhouse and go to work. And now when you look what Heinisch did against Fajeda, Cesar scored an early takedown, timed Heinisch's forward movement and put him on his back very quickly. Now Heinisch, though, as you would expect, started shrimping almost immediately, was able to get back to his feet, was striking in close with elbows, short punches to kind of punish that failed takedown attempt. He was actually taken on multiple times in the fight, but not easy to keep down. Fajeda had a lot of trouble keeping him on his back. We also saw Heinisch go for an arm-in guillotine and an armbar against Fajeda, and against a very talented BJJ black belt. You say to yourself, is that a smart move? It's impressive that he's fearless and he's capable of going for things like that. But at the same time, do you want to be giving up position against a guy who's capable of squashing you for the rest of the fight? Maybe he felt he was confident enough to get back to his feet. Either way, it tells you that he's not afraid to engage on the ground with a talented ground fighter. Now, for Antonio, he has taken on all his opponents but one in the UFC, which was the very brief no contest against Kevin Casey. Often only needs one takedown, a completion, and then end that fight on the mat shortly thereafter. He has good top pressure. His transitional game is solid. He sets up his submissions well. He looked for him to work in some ground and pound to try and open you up and set up that opportunity for him to advance or lock something up. Overall, he's just a handful once he gets you on the mat. Now, we have seen him have some success. He's on the feet. He's got some improved leg kicks. He's got a decent right hand. Again, just like I mentioned with one of the previous fighters, his striking is a secondary aspect of his offense. I think it was Davi Ramos. He needs to avoid falling in love with the striking, getting drawn into a fight that's going to compromise his cardio and put him in a bad spot and let Heinisch really do what he wants to do. If Heinisch can push him, he can emulate that fight with Fajeda and both his success against Fajeda and ACJ's loss to Dan Kelly. He's very capable of maybe surviving some tough going in the first round and then rallying in rounds 2 and 3 for either a finish or a decision victory. Heinisch, though, and he's shown he can get back up, but again, the reason he was showing he can get back up is he was getting taken down multiple times by Fajeda, and if he gets taken down by Antonio Carlos Jr., I feel Antonio will do a better job of controlling the position and grind him out. Look for ACJ to close him down, take him down, set up that top control, and eventually work into a position where he can get the finish here. And my prediction is Antonio Carlos Jr. to defeat Ian Heinisch by submission. Now, what was originally supposed to be our co-main event, and I'm still going to predict it in that spot, but again, I believe it's going to be knocked down the card. We're in the UFC's welterweight division as the silent assassin Vicente Luque, ranked 15th, 15-6-1, was scheduled to take on Neil Magny. Instead, we'll be facing very late notice replacement Derrick Krantz with a very veteran-like record of 23 wins and 10 defeats. I feel for Vicente Luque, he has been fighting very impressively for the last little while. Finally got a ranking just on the cusp at 15, gets a chance at the 13th ranked fighter and Magny. Magny pulls out what appears to be a failed drug test, and Luque is risking his ranking and his standing in the division against a newcomer, a relative unknown, with very little to gain. Now, as I said, Luque is building towards contendership. 4 straight wins, all by finish. Winner in 8 of his last 9s, all by finish. And yet, because of the depth of the division, he's having trouble getting that notoriety, getting that recognition. A win over Magny would have been a nice step towards the next shot, maybe a top 10 ranked opponent. As I said, he was scheduled to face Magny, which would have continued that opportunity. Now he's fighting an opponent that if he loses, he is going to take a massive step back. It's a very high-risk, limited reward opportunity for the Brazilian. Physically, Luque is 3 years younger. He's 1 inch taller than Krantz. Krantz is coming in on less than a week's notice. He just fought at the end of March. And when you look at his record, he's got a lot of experience. 32 career fights. He's fought a number of notable names. Alex Morano, Derek Campos, Andrei Koreshkov, Sean Spencer. Back in 2010, he fought Dustin Poirier. He lost to all of those fighters. But at the same time, he does have some wins over some noteworthy guys. Again, Daniel Roberts, Kyle Bradley, Brock Nelson, all some UFC experience. Roberts still in the UFC. So this guy's got a fairly comprehensive record of decent competition. His record right now, 9 wins by knockout, 11 wins by submission. He's been knocked out twice. He's been submitted 5 times, and he's 2-3 on the scorecards. Now, Vicente's become a very well-rounded fighter. Very dangerous fighter, very effective striker, and very dangerous submission grappler. He poses a lot of problems for a lot of guys, and I feel like he's one of those fighters who can certainly be on the cusp of a title shot here in the not-too-distant future. In the UFC, he has 5 wins by knockout. Knocking out Bilal Muhammad and Brian Barberena is no easy task. He hurt Nico Price, another very durable, very tough opponent. He hurt him badly before getting a submission, and he's got 3 submission wins in the UFC as well. Now, the one knock on Vicente, which I'm hoping we're starting to get past with his last performance, he is 2-6-1 in 3-round fights. As he's coming off that 3-round victory over Bam Bam, and a very late stoppage against a tough opponent, but still, it's a poor record. Again, as an older fighter matures, he figures things out, and he appears to have improved his pacing. He still slowed down in the Barberena fight, a guy who pushes a very impressive pace and landed a lot of strikes in that matchup, but he did well. He still conserved himself. He wasn't completely gassed out, and again, very durable, very good cardio Barberena. He overcame him in that fight. Now, there are definitely some concerns with the late notice replacement factor for Krantz, because you don't know. He's going to come into this matchup, how does it impact Luque, first and foremost? How does that change, how is his camp developed facing a very long, diversified fighter in Neil Magny? Now we've got to fight another guy who will get a little bit of time to prepare for. Does it change his approach? Does he just stick with his game plan and come out and fight? Krantz has nothing to lose here. He has everything to gain. He will no doubt come into this matchup loose and ready to go. He's a veteran fighter with a lot of experience, so don't anticipate him being messed up with in a situation whatsoever. He knows if he wins this, he immediately springs himself into the at least a noteworthy spot in the welterweight rankings. I don't know if he gets ranked, but he certainly gets himself on the cusp of an opportunity to fight for a ranking. It's a huge chance. He fast forwards himself and catches himself back up for a guy who's been on the regional scene for a long time. Luque's struggles ultimately have come when you can extend him, get him into rounds 2 and round 3, and he starts to slow down. That being said, again, Brian Barberina couldn't do it, and that says something to the progress of Vicente. Additionally, Krantz does 2 and 3 with some struggles outside of the first round. He's not exactly known for a guy who's going to wear you out in the later stages of a fight. Look for Luque to continue to show how dangerous his hands are. He's going to break him down on the feet. He eventually will get this fight to the floor with either a takedown or a knockdown. He's going to capitalize on that questionable submission defense. And my prediction is Vicente Luque to defeat Derrick Krantz by submission. We move now to the main event of the evening. We're in the UFC's welterweight division. His former divisional champion, Rafael dos Anjos, 28-11-0, takes on the Motown phenom, Kevin Lee, with a current record of 17 wins and 4 losses. Now, Lee is moving up to 170 pounds after dropping 2 of his last 3 in the lightweight division. He lost to Ali Aquinta. He lost to Tony Ferguson. He had a win over Edson Barboza in the middle, but he was having some trouble making weight. He's one of these guys who's advocated for 165-pound division, somewhere in between, but obviously the UFC is not making that happen anytime soon. For Dos Anjos, he is the former lightweight champion. He lost back-to-back fights at lightweight, including losing his title fight, but then he won 3 in a row once he moved up to 170 pounds, but then suffered losses to Colby Covington and the current divisional champion. Nothing to sneeze at there. Physically, Lee 1 inch taller. He'll have a 7-inch reach advantage, and he's the younger fighter by 8 years. Now, the first question we have to ask ourselves is RDA on the decline? Or did he run into a pair of buzzsaws at welterweight, the champion and the former interim champion, and simply, it takes elite level guys to take him down? That's quite a possibility. Second question, with Lee coming up from lightweight, does that negate some of the size issues and issues that RDA has had fighting those bigger grinding-based welterweights? And that's where he struggled. RDA has struggled with grinding wrestlers, guys that can hold him against the cage, push him back, wear him out with their pace and pressure, negate some of his strengths. Lee has shown he can fit that profile. He has taken guys down, beat them up on the mat, and worn them down. He absolutely has done that. When you look at RDA against Usman, he gave up 12 takedowns. Against Covington, he gave up 7. Just over his previous 9 UFC fights, he was taken down just twice. Again, you're not facing guys who are going to spam takedowns like those two individuals, but still, you can see it takes a top-level guy to implement that. Does Lee find that success? Lee was able to find some success with takedowns against Iaquinta and Tony Ferguson. He landed 3 in each of those fights, but it wasn't enough. He wore himself down. He got worn out. He lost the decision lost the decision against Iaquinta. Ferguson finished him. His cardio didn't hold up. He struggled to close against striking-based fighters, didn't do enough on the feet. Will that welterweight fix negate some of those cardio issues? Again, it's yet to be seen here. Lee could also lose a little bit of the edge when it comes to grappling. Without that size advantage he's had over a lot of guys fighting at 155 pounds, he might not be able to enforce his will as he has in the past. Now, I will just go out and say RDA is a far superior striker. He's more diversified, more volume on the feet, more capable than Lee, more punching power overall. And when you look at Lee, he's had some issues defensively, and his chin isn't ironclad. He was TKO by Leonardo Santos way back in the day. He struggled with Efrain Escudero in another fight. He was hurt by Francisco Trinaldo. He was hurt by Edson Barboza. And again, he was finished by Tony Ferguson. He's a guy you can do some damage to. Defensively, he's not sound. He has a good jab, but not a lot after that. He gave up 111 strikes against Ali Aquinta, and his output dropped off significantly after round 2 in that matchup, and Aquinta simply pulled away from him. RDA, again, he has struggled in the later stages of those fights, but against opponents that are able to dominate him early and to set up that advantage later in the matchup. It's not something he's going to give to you. If you let RDA, as we saw in the Robbie Lawler matchup, if you let RDA, fight his fight, he is very capable of doing that for a full 5 rounds. In this matchup, I think Dos Anjos can stay vertical and he can get back up if taken down. I don't think Lee can emulate what Covington and Usman did to him. He doesn't have the cardio to do it. Going up in weight might actually be an issue, as carrying that extra weight could hurt his cardio just as much as having to cut down. I think RDA is going to utilize his greater striking variety and volume here. Lee tends to fade as well, which is known. Carrying that extra weight could be an issue. It could hurt him here. I think RDA pulls away. He could possibly score a TKO victory here, but my prediction is Rafael Dos Anjos to defeat Kevin Lee by decision. So those are my 6 main card predictions for UFC Fight Night 152. All of my preliminary picks will be available at kamikazeoverdrive.net. Please head over there and check them out when you get the opportunity. This is a fun card, and then afterwards we get a little bit of a break, so it's nice to kind of enjoy this and then realize I get a chance to have a bit of a almost a holiday for mixed martial arts and focus on a couple other things I do. Either way, I'm very much looking forward to it. You can purchase my bet packs for $15, breaking down the entire fight top to bottom. Follow me on Twitter at KO_predictions. Throw me a like and a subscription on YouTube if you're just checking me out for the first time. Very much appreciate and welcome to my channel. Doing this for a long time, and I don't want to toot my own horn, but when I've been around for as long as I have, you have to assume I've had some success, and people must like my stuff. Again, I don't win all the time, I don't lose all the time. Let's go that way. On that note, let's take a break, and then we'll get ourselves out of here. Thanks for tuning in, guys. Take care. Hi.